Now, primary schools across the country are fast approaching the summer break with children, and probably most of the teachers as well, all looking forward to a break from the books. However, many parents worry that their children may fall behind if they don't keep up with some of their schoolwork over the summer, especially if their child already struggles with spelling and reading, etc. Now, learning diversity expert Sarah Haboubi joins me now to discuss the phenomenon of summer learning loss and how parents can tackle it. You're very welcome, Sarah. Very welcome back to the programme, in fact.
Thank you.
Right, summer learning loss. What is it and how does it affect children's education?
Essentially, the school year has been set up to cope initially with agricultural demands. So obviously people were released in the summer to help with the harvest, etc. And the reality is obviously that's gone, but the summer holidays still remain. So you've got 8 weeks for primary schools, nearly 12 weeks for secondary schools. And over that time, children's learning can actually slip backwards because they haven't been practicing their basic skills over the summer. So when they hit school in September, sometimes it takes between 7 and 8 weeks for teachers to basically go over what's been taught previously.
Knock the rust off.
Knock the rust off.
Well, we were just saying before you sat down there that if any of us, whatever our jobs were, was to stop doing them for 2 months, 2.5 months, and then go back to it, we'd be pretty rusty. It'd take us a while to get back up to speed.
Absolutely.
So why should it be any different for children?
Absolutely, yeah. So it obviously affects children in the sense that, particularly those who've already been struggling at school, so if they have dyslexia or any kind of learning challenges, they've already been working so hard at school to try and keep up with their peers that then over the summer it can actually slip back. And sometimes maths can be 2.5 months that they lose. For reading, it can be a couple of months. Spelling, it's almost the same as maths, 2.5 months. And by the time someone's 10 or 11, they've actually found that they can actually lose about 2.5 years.
Wow.
Because of this, it compounds over the years.
OK, so it stands to reason. It's common sense that it would have an effect. And obviously with children who have any kind of learning difficulties or who are struggling, then it has to have a negative effect. You've just given us a kind of what's that metric that you use to gauge how much effect it has?
The standardised tests that are often used at the end of the school year were actually used at the beginning of the following school year to see, what had actually been maintained and what had been lost. So it's normally just down to the standardised tests, the things that they've actually measured over the year anyway. But then there's always we have the STEM scores here, the maths and the English. So they just use the same sort of test to look at that. Most of the research was done in the States, actually.
OK, so scientifically, it is a fact that there is a thing called summer learning loss, and depending on your child and where they are, it can have a quite dramatic impact on them and will continue to have throughout their school life, which of course means negatively impacting on their careers and professional lives as well. OK, explain the concept of neurodiversity. Our schools are basically one size fits all, which is, our children are as different as fingerprints from each other, so...
Absolutely. We love the expression neurodiversity. It was coined in the mid-90s. And essentially, it points to the fact that actually every single person's brain is wired completely differently. We have a cohort of students who the way they're being taught matches the way they learn. So it looks as if the teaching is working, which it is, simply because the way the information is presented and the way that they're asked to think about things actually matches the way that they naturally process information. But we have around 20% of the population whose brains do not work in that way, so they need a different way of being taught. It's not that they're learning disabled, it's actually that the teaching doesn't match the way that they're learning. So they're trying to learn in the same way as their peers, but actually we need teaching diversity to match neurodiversity.
Well, I've always wondered, look, our system is rote learning. We know that. You keep repeating it long enough and eventually you can parrot it back. That's grand if you think, as most people do, in a linear fashion. But if you don't, if you are a lateral thinker, and, people will, we all have kids who are dreamers or who, we say they're away with the fairies or whatever. It's not that they are, it's just that their brains are functioning in a different way. And that doesn't work for them.
No, absolutely. So we have, as you said, linear learners who like to have specific information, very detailed information, building up to a big picture. But then you have learners who like the big picture. So we know, particularly with dyslexia, that actually they are big picture thinkers. They're global learners. They want to see the whole thing before they start looking at it piecemeal. So a lot of the way that the education is actually delivered, their teaching is delivered, is actually piecemeal, and it's like their brain doesn't have anywhere to put that in. So they need the big picture first, and then you can go down into detail.
OK, well, you've given us several very good reasons why this needs to be looked at and that we need to do something about it. I just want to give you the devil's advocate or the counter argument, which is, look, they're kids. For God's sake, they've been in school for 9 months. They need a break. They need they need a chance to kind of assimilate and file and put away all that learning for 9 months. They need a break from constant learning.
Absolutely. And I'm a mum too. I have 2 boys, and I know they would absolutely shoot me if I started to introduce very structured learning. But parents play a huge role in terms of incidental learning with their children. So you can, over the summer, you can you can pick a favourite book that's the summer book that you read together, and you can have even reading a menu or reading a brochure when you're going outside. So in terms of constantly reading, because you need reading for absolutely everything. So just to keep that up and keep that practice, it doesn't have to be in a structured way. And actually, our system that we've developed is actually specifically designed so it's only 5 to 10 minutes every day, just to build up the word bank. Because actually, the bigger the word bank, the more fluent the reading, the better the spelling, and that then sort of bleeds into absolutely every single academic subject, particularly even, for example, maths with word problems. Quite often children look as if they're not very good at maths because we have a lot of project maths now in secondary schools, and obviously we have a lot of word problems in primary schools. And the reality is it's not the maths that they're having difficulty with, it's actually translating the English into mathematical equations. So it's understanding that. So all those things can be done in an incidental way, rather than, sort of heads stuck in the screens and playing PS4s and things like that.
Actually, that'll be my last question here. Before I get to that, okay, I mean, we're talking about it in general. It's useful for any child, even the linear learners,
yeah.
right? The break can be too long, they can get out of practice and get rusty, etc. For those who have difficulties with, people who have dyslexia or dyspraxia, or who maybe have ADHD or whatever, those parents will go, listen, it's a struggle to keep them focused when they're in school, so give them more than a week or 2 off it and trying to get them back on. I mean, September can be an absolute nightmare for those. So what do they do during the summer?
Well, again, making learning as fun as possible is always really useful. I mean, the brain never stops learning. I mean, learning is not a discrete activity where you start and then you stop and then that's it, now you stop learning.
Technically, we should all be learning all the time, shouldn't we?
Well, we are. The brain actually can't stop learning. It's what are we learning and what are we practicing? So in terms of stress levels in particular for people who are struggling, that's one of the things that we actually address, is actually we teach parents and children how to essentially control their own emotions. Because if you're struggling to learn, it's very frustrating. And then you can get quite depressed and quite down about it. And the last thing you want to do is then go near any books. So actually what we address first is the emotional side of learning. And actually what's involved with that is very, very simple. And it helps parents too. I know, as I said, I'm a mum, so I understand those stresses.
This is an absolutely fascinating topic, and unfortunately we've run out of time. We haven't got to the whole thing about devices and how screens and gaming can be wonderful, but also can drive children who might have different sort of electrical, neural pathways, mad. It can actually be very bad for them. So for the time being, if anybody wants to find out more about this, what they do is they go to your website, which is?
It's a bit of a long URL, apologies for that, but it's jumpstartinglearningskills.com.
Okay.
And there's actually an offer for June as well. So we really want as many parents to have this so that over the summer they can help.
Grant, well, we'll put all that information up on our website and a link to it as well. And maybe you'll come back to us and talk to us about some of the other bits that we didn't get to this morning.
I'd love to.
Thank you, Sarah.